Welcome to Agri-food Data Canada, completing an OCA Schema template. So you should have already downloaded the OCA Schema, and what we are going to do is we're going to do an example with an example sample data set here. This is based on one that I found in a repository, and we're going to be writing a schema in Excel following this example. So on the data entry template, you can see here that we have the schema name and schema description. We can actually leave those blank for the moment because if we fill out another part of the schema, that part will be auto-filled. The part that we do can work on right now is the date, and then you can put your contact information. So I'm going to put my email here so that people can contact me about the schema. Now, we don't have anything for a user assigned identifier. Perhaps your lab has an identifier for a schema already, but otherwise we can wait until after we've generated it, and then we will insert the self-addressing identifier, the SED. Now, also on this README page, you'll see that we have predefined data formats. So this is for in the future when you want to add data formatting. Right now there's a whole bunch of pre-selected ones, so we don't need to do any kind of adjustment. And further on down the page is the reference documentation. So this is if you wanted to look up what the different kinds of overlays are present within the schema, that is down there. But you don't have to do anything with that. Instead, we can move directly on to the main part of the schema. So this is where we enter in the basic structure of our data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my data, and I'm going to copy the headers, because back in my template, those headers are going to become my attribute names. So I'm going to paste them transposed. There we go. So those become the attribute names, and then the form automatically fills in this classification. It's the Statistics Canada annotation for that it's research data related to agri-food. And in the future, if you're in a different research area, then we can change that type of coding. But for now, the template autofills with that. We go through and we select what kind of attribute it is. So the farm is text, and then everything else after this is going to be numerical data. Now you'll notice that it starts filling in a repeat of the attribute type, and that's because Excel, if you were to say array, the Excel drop-down menus don't like square brackets. So if you want to use square brackets, you have to do this little confusing hack, as it were. Okay, so now we have entered in the type of attributes, what type of attributes they are for each attribute name. Now, flagged attributes is where I would say if the data was personally identifying, for example. So it just helps researchers as you're working with data that, or someone else's data set, if they have marked that, for example, maybe the farm is a very specific geographic location, so that you might want to mark as flagged. But in my example, they're already coded, so I don't have any, nothing here needs to be flagged. So finally, then, the last part we can talk about are the units for the measurement. So I'm going to copy and paste this here. So those are the units for the different attributes. Now this is the language independent, as it were, portion of the schema. And where I can talk then about the specific language is on these language tabs down here below. So on the English tab, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a name and a description. So this is the name and the description in English of my data set. And now if I go back to README, you'll see that it has auto-filled that information, and it's getting it from the English language, but of course you could switch that out if you wanted. For development right now, that's how we have started it. Now, the reason that we have an English language specific page is, for example, you can put in English language specific labels, but you can also have, say, French language specific labels or an indigenous language or anything else. So that is a label that that other systems and other languages can systems can use to look up for language specific entry information. Then the information, this is where you would give better descriptions of what the data is. So you would want to be fairly verbose at this point, because somebody who doesn't know anything about, say, chicken gut health is going to come in and I when I looked up this data set myself, for example, breast weight in grams, and I was like, is that one breast or two? Is it the left or the right, or is it an average? That kind of level of detail would be quite useful to put inside. Now, I'm going to show an example here with the French language as well, because you can add the same kind of information but in French, for example, which might be helpful if you have collaborators somewhere else that want to use that language. Now, the nice thing is the base schema itself doesn't change. So that means that the basic structure of your schema, you know, the languages are just overlays over top of that. So here I have completed the schema. So back to the first page, that's the schema name, and the identifier is empty, and this schema is something that is ready to be uploaded and translated or into an OCA schema, which would become machine actionable in a JSON format. So thank you very much from the Agri-Food Data Canada at the University of Guelph.